Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special night, a very important night, and I think as Tom Horn and I have experienced over the last years, we've been doing radio interviews together and writing both together and apart. We find that the timing that the Lord places us on the radio is usually at a turning point in history. Now, Tom and Chris Putnam has just come out with their new book, Petrus Romanus, The Final Pope is Here. Chapter 17 is posted on Tom's website, RaidersNewsUpdate.com, and I think everyone should absolutely be impressed with the lateness of the hour, because this is stuff that everyone has been teaching for literally over 100 years. Obviously, in modern Christendom, everybody waited for the appointed time. It's the appointed time, and I want Tom to have maximum time tonight. When you're going to send your questions, you can send them in to Bruce. Bruce can ask the questions of either Tom or myself, but please direct the ones about Petrus Romanus and everything to Tom Horn. Tonight we're going to hit the Vatican. The first hour we're going to hit the Vatican and alien disclosure. Tom sent me an email, and based on Donna's response, that's where the interest lies, and we'll, as usual, all gain an infinite new understanding of this amazing research and what we're going to basically looking forward to in the very short period. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Steve. Great to be back on the show with you guys again. Always my absolute pleasure. It humbles me to get to be with great minds like yourself and to be able to have these conversations concerning the Vatican, the alien connection, what, if anything, it has to do with the arrival of Petrus Romanus. And you're right, and Donna was right. And I would say probably at least 10 to 1, Steve, and we got a lot of follow-up email following that last show that we did when Chris Putnam was on with us, and 10 to 1, it had to be people wanting to know more about the sources that I was citing concerning the Vatican, and of course Donna had to create just kind of a copy and paste email to send to all those people that wanted to go for themselves and read those documents about the Vatican's position on ET and how that might change religion, and we'll be talking about all that tonight. I will give you an update. We heard just today that the books Petrus Romanus are shipping today, so we're hoping by or before the 15th that we will have those in the warehouse, in our local warehouse here in Missouri, as well as the 2 warehouses for the distributor. And this book has already broke all sales records, all previous sales records for our distributor on pre-sales of a book have been broken by this book, Petrus Romanus. And so that illustrates the interest around the world that people have right now, the questions they have, Steve, for the kind of issues that you are brave enough to tackle. The people are there that have the questions, want to know what's going on in the world.
Well, again, Tom, I think it's very telling and truly compelling that years ago, even discussion of aliens would have been relegated and delegated to the realm of deliverance and the rites of exorcism. Now it seems like what is absolutely mind-boggling in the years that you and I have been doing talk radio together, me interviewing you, the thing that's fascinating is the acceleration. Now, you know me, I like to go to the bottom line. Let's start out with the alien disclosure and how that's going to affect mainstream Catholics, because it's already a given that the Vatican has its own intelligence. They have their own telescopes. They know what's going on. They have been briefed. They're clued in. But how will they sell it, Tom Horn, to the faithful who, as I said, would basically consider this stuff of the devil? And, I want to address later, too, Tom, with you the fact that this good alien, bad alien thing, this is all playing out according to the Luciferians' plan for the ultimate deception. So can we get to that? You mind if we hit it that way first? We'll just deal with the Vatican's entire change of perspective. Go ahead, sir. The floor is yours.
And also, if we can, sometime tonight, let's give an update on the David Flynn collection. And I would even like, if possible, to quote some of David's research, because he touched on a lot of this material long before I did. In fact, David touched on a lot of this material long before a lot of us did. And I'd like to be able to honor him by making that point. Well, first of all, let me start out by talking about what's in the headlines this week. You probably have saw One of the headlines was Countdown to Discovery of Alien Life, Tens of Billions of Rocky Planets in Milky Way Habitable Zones. That was from the European Space Agency. And what they're talking about is how their HARPS Planet Finder, interesting name, huh? But their HARPS Planet Finder has proven to them within their own science that they're rocky planets, Earth-like planets, and planets that are not much bigger than Earth and that could host life are way more common in the habitable zones around faint red stars than what we ever believed before. In fact, the international team there in Europe estimates that there are tens of billions of planets just in the Milky Way galaxy, and probably hundreds, or at least 100, just inside the sun's immediate neighborhood. So now the odds of finding sentient, intelligent extraterrestrials just went into the stratosphere. And so now, of course, the scientific teams, the bodies, what they've got to try to determine is if they should try to send signals to some of these planets to make contact. There's some who believe that's not a very good idea. And if they get any kind of response, then in what ways should they maybe follow up with that? Well, on the heels of the European Space Agency's reports, there is a new article that's at Life Science tonight, Life Science, which I think is owned by Reuters. But in any case, it's posted over there tonight. We're going to post it at Raiders News Update tomorrow morning, and it's a feature article that's called, If We Discover Aliens, What's Our Protocol for Making Contact? And there's some pretty amazing stuff in this article in the sense that they're saying, first of all, they're saying it's conceivable now, based on these recent discoveries, that humans could very soon come in contact with aliens, and furthermore, that life may even exist on Mars. It may exist on Europa, a moon of Jupiter. Europa, appears to have an underground ocean. And there's an astronomer from Pennsylvania State University by the name of Jacob Misra, who they quote in that article, and he's saying that there could be sentient life living in the underground ocean on Jupiter. So does this sound like the no-mo to anybody but me? And other possibilities he talks about. He says intelligent extraterrestrial beings may have traveled from a distant star system, and they've taken up residence in our solar system. They might, in fact, he says, be living in underground bases on Mars or the moon. Well, as I'm reading this stuff, knowing this is, this is Reuters, this is Life Science, this is not Weekly World News, right? It makes me go back to something I was thinking about earlier this year, and that is, what is the real purpose of Curiosity, the rover that houses the Mars Science Laboratory, that's halfway to Mars right now? In fact, Curiosity, I guess this last Sunday, April the 1st, reached a milestone in that it passed the halfway point. It's traveling at something like 10,000 miles an hour to the red planet. But it's going to spend 2 years analyzing Mars around its landing site, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's what we're being told. But then you get these people that are academics, and some of them are members of NASA's astrobiology team, and they come out with statements like that there could be sentient life already on Mars living in underground cabins. I mean, is this guy just a fruitcake? And if so, why is he, the spokesman for Life Science and Reuters News? Well, it's very interesting times that we're living in. And what does this have to do with Petrus Romanus? What does this have to do with the Vatican? I'll tell you something that I haven't talked about this on radio anywhere, Steve. But this, from the beginning, this has been one of the creepiest ideas surrounding the arrival of Petrus Romanus, the false prophet, and any possible connection to the alien agenda. And this came to me when we were doing this research. Was there, related to Malachi Martin's vow, that an occult ritual was performed in 1963 at the Vatican and the Target Chapel in South Carolina involving a woman for the purposes of pregnation, or possibly there was a young priest for the express purpose of instilling something within him, or those priests that were there, but the whole purpose of it was to enthrone Lucifer over the Vatican, according to this Jesuit priest. And that all of that was connected in another book by Malachi Martin to a final conclave that would bring to the throne of Peter a pope under the control of Satan, the false prophet. And of course, according to the prophecy of the popes, the final conclave is the one following Benedict, which right now, according to the Vatican's own news sources, the College of Cardinals are preparing right now for the conclave that will elect his successor. But here's the creepy part of this, was in this ritual that Malachi Martin brought up. And if you read his books and his descriptions, there are parts of it that sound almost identical to alien abduction descriptions. You know how that some of the best researchers into the field of alien abduction have often made parallels to dark occultism, right?
Absolutely.
The rituals, the use of blood, the use of genetics, the use of menstrual fluids, the things that they do in occult black magic and in the black mass, and in some of Malachi's descriptions, sounds eerily like some of the same activity that happens in alien abduction phenomenon. And it came to me one day that the Vatican's interest right now in alien intelligence, and if you remember, who was it? Was it Balducci? It was one of the Catholics' own bishops some years ago who said that the Vatican was already in contact. Remember that? Was already interacting. You remember who I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. And you and I spoke of that years ago on the radio. And it's my contention, Tom, just to basically parenthetically insert something into this. Look, they already are in contact. We already have them, not on Mars or the moon. And somebody said, well, you know, Steve, it's not very far if you can make it to the Mars from some exoplanet to jump into the Earth's atmosphere or jump into the Earth's oceans. And Tom, over the years that I have been on talk radio and even before that writing about this stuff, I can't tell you how many people I've personally talked to that have been in the most secret government programs, including Phil Schneider 5 days before he was murdered, a guy by the name of Tex Armstrong who absolutely validated everything that I'd ever been told, and multiple generals and multiple intel agents. But you know what the common thread was in all these guys? They said it was something so not what you'd expect from intergalactic or interplanetary visitors. He said the occult emanations. Even told me about one guy that was present at Dulce, the underground base at Dulce, who was a Christian, and when he saw some of these entities in person now, he rebuked them in Jesus' name under his breath. And listen, a general told me this, active duty, no, you know, friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. And they absolutely, the aliens demanded that no, this is interesting, Christians be present at Dulce when they cut their deal. And Dulce is just one of many alien hives that exist. So, saying all that, what I'm just saying is they're already, to amplify what you've said, look, they're already, they've met with the ambassadors. So the whole plan is, Tom, how do they, number one, as Catholics and as basically the keepers of the faith, how do they leak that into their believers? And obviously there are different Catholics, the old school Catholics versus the new school. So, and this isn't just a Catholic issue. This is a total deception of the whole world issue. So how are they going to do that, in your opinion? Because, look, they've already given us enough stuff. Isn't it amazing? You really think that they didn't know about all those planets that exist? You think they didn't know about Europa and they didn't know about the Martian caverns and all that stuff? We get to David Flynn. I mean, David Flynn wrote the premier piece on Cydonia, and that Jonathan Swift knew about Phobos and Deimos, and even the Russians talking about Phobos being artificial. All these things don't just go back to the invention of science fiction movies. They go back hundreds of years, and in the case we'll talk about later, in all the cave drawings and everything else on the aliens, the alien presence is absolutely astonishing, whether you go to the Australian outback or into Bryce Canyon, Utah, and you've got these petroglyphs, if you will, of guys in spacesuits and helmets, and they're usually 8 or 9 feet tall. So isn't it amazing now? I think what you've laid the best groundwork for, of anybody I've ever interviewed, is how everything, both religious, financial, philosophical, theological, all these points are coming together at this time.
And don't you think that, given what we know, and also, I guess, what we could suspect, that there would be reason to imagine that if, in fact, the Bishop of Rome, who said they were, years ago, that they were already involved in contact, interacting with, if you read, again, I'm not going to stay on Malachi Martin, but if you read his books, he was making a very specific case that there was an incarnation that was set to occur that would, in the final conclave, bring about an individual who essentially is not just under the control of Satan. He could even be in some aspect, not like the Antichrist, but in some reality, kind of a Satan incarnate. In other words, something entirely different about him. And that came back to me when I got to thinking about how the best researchers into alien abduction note these occult rituals. And years ago I did research in which I discovered, first of all, that most of the Vatican's astronomers that are mostly interested, including the newest ones, by the way, that are mostly interested in the alien phenomenon, also are certified exorcists. Isn't that a strange formula?
Absolutely.
The guys who are most called or intrigued or whatever in dealing with demons happen to also be the very ones that want to be astronomers and make contact with this other intelligence. But in any case, I discovered a long time ago that the ancient records, if you go back, you look at the records of the incubus, the succubus, there was always this collecting of human sperm by these night visitors or fluids from women. And they would, depending on whether it was incubus or succubus, they'd use it to impregnate a female host or to have sex with a male host, and how that all of that ancient language is identical in many ways to the testimonies of those who claim contact, and sounds also very much like what Malachi Martin had said. There's another thing that we won't go into, but it has to do with the medieval stories about the devil's mark, and how, according to the ancient beliefs, the devil would mark his victims for identification, and his marks were, scratches on them from a talon, they believed back then. The little straight scars, odd spots, typically in in their genitive areas, and same thing today. And what we now call alien abduction, we wouldn't call it the devil's mark, but you have the same kind of marks, the same kind of scratches. So something's been going on for a very long time, and it has an interest in creating. It has an interest in building a body or in altering a human body. And then, of course, the question is, for what purposes? Now, the Vatican's astronomers, so to get back on the European Space Agency and the Vatican, they're really excited about these developments, or at least now they can admit their excitement. And I don't know if you know who Daniel Sheehan is. He's a graduate of Harvard Law School. He's a professor of world politics or something at the University of California. But in the 1970s, he's a Jesuit, I think, and he was the general counsel to the United States Jesuit Office of Social Ministry in Washington, D.C. But what's important about him is that not only is he an intellectual, but he was a special consultant to the United States Congressional Research Office project on extraterrestrial intelligence that had been ordered and set up by President Jimmy Carter. I don't know if you recall that, but he was a special consultant to them for the Jesuits. And now, with what the Vatican's been saying, between Jose Funes and all these guys out there talking, he's writing quite a bit, and he's reminding people that it wasn't very long ago, a couple years ago, when the Vatican actually called together a bunch of academics at the Vatican for consideration of the philosophical and the theological questions posed by the discovery of extraterrestrial life. You remember that? It was, I think, 2009, and the Pontifical Academy of Sciences there in Rome, Italy, they convened this 5-day conference. There was something like 30 world scientists that went there to the summer residence of Pope Benedict XVI's grounds, and they in the Pontifical Astronomical Observatory. I don't remember who all, but it was a conference that was called by the Vatican to ask astronomers and astrobiologists from the United States, France, Britain, Switzerland, Chile, to present to the Vatican's philosophers and theologians, and actually even just a number of the members of the Catholic hierarchy among the College of Cardinals, to have them to present to those members of the Catholic hierarchy what is the mounting evidence of the existence of sentient life on other planets outside of the solar system. Well, now that's what the public understood this meeting was all about. But what Sheehan is saying, and he would know, is that the principal purpose of the conference was to actually indoctrinate, help, adjust, introduce the leaders of the Catholic Church to prepare for the reality of extraterrestrial intelligence, technologically advanced, non-human, sentient civilization that is in the universe that evidently some in the Vatican were aware of, but many others were not. It's protected knowledge, right? You need above security clearance. The Vatican basically introduced what today in the U.S. we call above top secret security clearance. But at the conclusion of that Vatican conference, at the time, the Jesuit director of the Vatican Observatory, Father Jose Gabriel Funes, he convened a press conference, and I remembered it, but I didn't realize the coded language that he was used that has now been brought out by Daniel Sheehan, in which he said publicly, he had a press conference. It was an official press conference at the Vatican, and so whatever he said would be official language. It'd be approved by the Vatican. And he said the questions of life's origin and whether life exists elsewhere in the universe deserves serious attention and offers many philosophical and theological implications. Okay, well, that doesn't sound like much to start with, but that the term theology was raised as a topic that would need to be reconsidered as a result of this new knowledge of extraterrestrial intelligence was consistent with 1 year before that, when he was quoted in the official Vatican newspaper, you know, the what's it called, the El Osservatore or whatever it is, Romano, and he was quoted as saying that if other intelligent beings do exist elsewhere in our universe and they are discovered by us, then they too will have to be considered to be part of God's creation. Well, what Sheehan is saying is that on the face of it, that statement doesn't seem like an important event, but what is unbeknown to most of the non-Catholic world, at least, is that Funes' specific choice of words was a precise restatement, exact wording of a key aspect of the official Catholic Church's edict that was issued in 1277 by Bishop Tempier, the Bishop of Paris, in which the Catholic Church officially condemned St. Thomas Aquinas' theological proposition, I think it's proposition number 34, in which Aquinas had publicly asserted that the first cause, meaning God in Catholic theology, cannot possibly have created other worlds. That was officially condemned by the Catholic Church on the specific grounds that it would set limits on God's creative freedom and the idea that God might have other sentient creatures living in other places. Well, the precise words are those that were deliberately used by Father Funes in 2008. In other words, Funes was sending a specific message that the bulk of the world, guys like me, we would never catch what he had just done. But according to Daniel Sheehan, a Harvard Law School professor who's currently a professor of world politics at the University of California, and more specifically was the United States Jesuit of Office Social Ministry Council who worked with President Jimmy Carter on this subject matter. What he's saying is that Funes was sending a specific message that only Catholic scholars would get. Basically, the time is here. The time has arrived. So is he overstating the facts? I don't know. But to announce this new official policy of the Roman Catholic Church acknowledging the likelihood of the existence of extraterrestrial life elsewhere in the universe in 2009 seems really suspicious to me. The fact that the specific year 1277 Catholic edict that condemned the proposition of Thomas Aquinas that there couldn't be other worlds with intelligent life, that was used by church authorities, I don't know. I think he's right. I think there was something there, and now these words are pointing Catholic leadership to the idea that we've made contact with morally.
I think it's bigger than that, though, Tom. I truly do. Because in all of my conversations, and I'm talking 2 decades with people in the know, the whole plan is, and this is what the argument has been, will the Antichrist be a possessed human being, or will it be an alien with claims that they created even Jesus? There was, are you familiar with the term the aviary?
Yes.
Well, you remember their claims is they even have like the equivalent of the DROPA disc, DROPA discs, that would indicate that they have, if you will, their version of a video recording. And so I think it's this: how do they reconcile the God of the Bible and the aliens who are going to claim to be our, if you will, originators? In other words, first cause is, as to a Christian, obviously, and to those of us who believe that God literally spoke the worlds into existence. This was the issue that even Zacharias Sitchin wrestled with. He could never admit that the Anunnaki could be fallen angels or rebellious angels who were created by God with free moral choice, and yet all of his research, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it, was both historically accurate, uniquely, how should I say this, researched, and you could only draw one conclusion. So how is it that, what is your opinion, Tom, based on what you're studying now? We've got obviously the final pope coming on. We've got the false prophet mentioned in the book of Revelation. We've got the Antichrist, the beast. We've got all these different people. But how are they going to swing, 1.2 billion or however many Catholics there are, to embrace this idea that there's no really, the God of the Bible was just a metaphor for our alien benefactors? I think, panspermia is the order of the day.
Well, that, and also, of course, the world could be shocked into going along with. Imagine, that you've got suddenly an armada of ships as big as the ones in that movie Independence Day that are hovering over the major cities of the world. People are going to quickly turn to the government and to who they consider to be their religious leaders for advice, and they'll pretty much step into lockstep, I believe.
Well, that's the answer. Yeah, that is the answer, in my opinion, and I think that you've brought that up in times past. Now we've seen, you can go on YouTube and you can see all the triangular-shaped aircraft or spacecraft that the Skunk Works has designed. And I want to give you a quote because I think it's so important that people understand this. Lockheed Skunk Works is the U.S. government contractor, big-time defense contractor that's had their secret stuff in the background developing it since Roswell. Reverse engineering alien stuff that's been found all over the world, and I've had special operations guys tell me that the focus and the maximum effort is spent in black projects is acquiring ancient technology and alien technology. So here's a quote. I know you've read this before, but he says, quote, "The former head, Ben Rich of Skunkworks, we already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects and would take an active God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do." Now, this is the guy that was head of the most top secret, most, if you will, alien when I say alien technology was their forte, reverse engineering it. And interestingly enough, that was he died, I think, at the age of 69, and he died very shortly after coming clean with that. By the way, there's a video on YouTube of that entire speech. So given the fact that you said something critical, Tom, we're going to be shocked into it. YouTube's now showing base ships of horrific size that are basically drawing drawing their energy from the sun. NASA's stopping all of their video footage when anything of, let's say, this extraterrestrial origin shows up. And then we've got the Planet X block up. But all this stuff, here's what I want to say. I want to bring it into what you're talking about. Petrus Romanus, whoever is, and you're going to share that with who you guys think it is, but he's already prepped and knows all this stuff. And if it's so, how should I say this, so time sensitive as you and Chris have put in your book, then I think everybody who's listening to this show worldwide had better get that, because they can actually follow the steps and the thinking then that with every new press release, it's like Tom Horn gets a new key to the mystery. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, and the keys to the mysteries are coming so quickly now that it's almost impossible to keep up with everything that's happening. I mean, just on the one subject alone of what's going on in Rome right now, what's going on at the Vatican. If you watch Raiders News Update, we've hardly had space on the website to include any news other than what's coming out of Rome. And